Hi, Jerry.
Hi, Kim. How are you today?
Good, good. I'm glad to get together this afternoon because we want to talk about some things that might, ease some nerves with some people who are looking into buying notes. And I
Absolutely.
know we talk about it all the time, but we take some things for granted. So I thought maybe we can come together and see if we can talk about it and maybe help those who are still, wondering if note investing is right for them, right?
Agreed.
So
Agreed.
before we get started, welcome to the Kim and Jerry podcast. And we just want to let everyone know that this is for education and information purposes only. We are not financial advisors or attorneys or CPAs, but we are very strong note investors, and we are sharing what we know and what we do in hopes that others would also invest in notes. So I'm
Absolutely.
going to let you go ahead and take it away. I don't know if you want to jump in the middle and work ourselves out, or you have any idea how you want to get started. Be my guest.
Um, well, you and I talked about this, and what we want to talk about today is what can go wrong.
Yes.
Because one of the things people ask us all the time is, well, what's the downside? What's the risk? What can happen?
Right.
And, I think, we need to spend a little bit of time just kind of walking people through, you know, what's going on in the note business. Why is it a secure investment?
It is.
And what are the possible things that can happen. So
Right.
having said that, we always say there are only three possible outcomes when you buy a note. And those are: number one, they pay as agreed. So every month you get your payment, it's in the mailbox, there's no big issue. The second thing is they pay it off early. And pay it off early, they refinance the house, they sold the house, whatever. In the United States, historically, um, every 7 years something happens, and typically mortgages don't run the full course, they get paid off for whatever reasons.
Yeah.
And then the final thing is people fail to pay. And so today what we want to talk about and we want to try to address is those three possible outcomes. What does it mean? And what do we do? What do we as investors do? And how do we manage and work through all of that? Having said that, and I know Kim, you got some things you want to say about this as well. I'm going to throw one more point in there. For the most part, in my investing in notes, outcome number two has been the most popular.
Where,
you
where
know,
it's been paid off early.
they pay it off early.
Right. Right.
And you think about, and well, why is that? Over the last several years, interest rates have been really low, and people have been refinancing their properties. Net result, I get phone calls. How much do I owe you?
Right.
And we pay it, and they pay that off.
Right. And like you said, though, I think that where to begin and develop a comfort zone is that notes only have three possible outcomes. Your investment is going to take one of the three tracks, if you will, in
Yeah,
regards to the life cycle of that investment of that note.
yeah,
And understanding that, um, it helps you to make wise decisions,
yeah,
understand your investment, and also begin a buy box, if you will, for the type of note you want to invest in, right?
agree, agree.
Because it basically tells the story of the investment when you're doing your due diligence, which track it's going to take, or the anticipated track it's going to take, right? And
Agreed.
so when you become more comfortable in understanding that, it makes it much easier and more comfortable in your investment strategies for notes.
Agreed. That's very true. So, um, just to kind of build on that, as you said, part of what we do when we are buying a note is, our due diligence. And what we do is we basically expect the best to happen.
Hmm.
But in the course of buying the note, we prepare for the worst. And the
Right,
reason for that is bad things happen to good people.
right,
when you buy your house and you took out that mortgage, you weren't expecting to lose your job.
Right.
You weren't expecting a divorce, a death, an accident, a health issue.
Right.
And those are all of the things that could come into play to cause something other than I'm going to pay the note as we agreed to pay.
Right.
So, anyway, a lot of that's cliches, but I just wanted to kind of throw that out there. We prepare, we prepare for the worst.
Right.
And as a result of that, outcomes are pretty good.
Outcomes are pretty good.
Yeah.
And when you think about notes, right?
Mhm.
And then we have a performing note, right,
Yes.
as a type of investment. And with performing notes, the history of the payment has been identified, right? So you
Yeah.
can begin to see or already feel comfortable in a performing note investment because people are paying in accordance as they promised to pay with their mortgage note, right?
Yes. And,
Uh,
to build on that, you said, we look at the payment history.
right,
One of the things about the payment history is mortgages are current if there are no payments over 90 days,
right,
or no payments aren't over 90 days late. So we're looking at the payment history to make sure they are paying every month.
right,
And sometimes you'll have a mortgage where, gee, it looks like over the last several years, they've missed a payment here or there. We will discount those mortgages a little bit more
right.
because,
But
yeah,
what that also demonstrated is that the borrower is interested in keeping their home and
yeah,
making those payments. So even though that for whatever hiccup happened in their life at that time, what was
yeah,
going on, there was a missed payment or a late payment, right? They still made sure that they paid their mortgage, right? So
yeah,
you begin to understand the psyche, if you will, of
yeah,
the borrower, right?
yeah,
And it appears that it's taking track number one, as you pointed out, where people will pay as agreed.
as agreed. Absolutely. And the other thing, to build on what you just said, when a borrower takes out a mortgage, they signed an IOU. That
Mm-hmm.
IOU is, I owe you money. I will pay you X amount per month for some period of time. If I don't pay, you can take my house. So they've signed that paperwork. And that's the contract that they've made with the lender. That's what we review. So, the first step in our process, Kim said it, we look at the payment history. We also look to make sure that all the payments all the paperwork is in order.
Mm-hmm.
So we know that um, there is a mortgage. And do we have a copy of the mortgage? There's a note. Do we have a copy of the note? Are the notes and the mortgages properly recorded, properly endorsed, properly transferred? And we make sure that stuff is in order, basically perfect before we decide we're going to buy the note.
Right.
Because
Right.
again, we're not trying to have a bad outcome. So make sure the paperwork is in order.
Right.
Um, the other thing, and Kim kind of alluded to that, we look at the character of the debtor. Do they pay their debts? Um, are they a serial bankruptcy person? Do they file foreclosure as a standard practice? If they
And
do,
believe it or not, we have come across, you know, everybody has a different standard of practice going on here
yeah,
as far as, their payment history is with their notes, right? So
yeah,
we see the
yeah,
back and forthness with who owns the deed between the wife and the husband and who claimed bankruptcy this year versus who claimed bankruptcy last time, you know.
yeah,
Um, and it is something to definitely look for
yeah,
and deem the character of the borrower.
yeah. And if you find a note with that kind of a character, we are not going to buy it. That's
Right.
just it's. it's not worth our effort. It's not worth our time. The borrower has told us who they are, and we
Right.
don't want to be a lender to that borrower.
That's right. That's right. And then you can make a conscious decision to buy, which is my favorite, right? A non-performing loan, right?
Yeah.
Um, and but there are strategies to buying a non-performing loan, right?
Mhm.
And and in doing due diligence, um, there is careful analysis done to determine whether or not the non-performing loan is still a good investment, right? And various different factors that go into um, consideration, right, for that type of decision.
Mhm.
Ultimately, we always try to work out a plan with with the borrower to see, because a lot of times people are, they try to hide away from their responsibilities, pretend like they don't own it anymore. uh, and because they're thinking the worst is getting ready to happen, right? But if you are able to connect and work it out, find out what's going on, and see if we can put something in place that, works for both of us, we try to do that. And then it becomes a good investment, right? Because
Yeah.
now the loan has been reworked, and it begins to demonstrate that it's reperforming,
Yes.
and if that turned out to be a good investment.
Yeah. So, kind of tying all of that stuff together, again, we go back to three possible things can happen. One, they pay it off as agreed. Two, they pay it off early. And like I said, that typically is what we see and we've been seeing over the last several years. Or three, they fail to pay.
Right.
And when they fail to pay, that's kind of the worst case scenario. And, Kim started to allude to it. We try to negotiate with the borrowers. We don't want your house.
Right.
There's some folks that'll say, well, gee, you invested in notes so that you can get houses. We buy notes all over the country. Owning a house in Peoria, Illinois, excuse me for folks that are on this about Peoria, I do not want to go to Peoria to take possession of a house.
Right, but it's a ways from where we are, so.
Yeah, I no knocks on Peoria. This is being taped, but I don't want to get in my car and drive hundreds of miles or thousands of miles to look at a house.
Right.
We don't want your house, so we'll try to figure out ways to help people stay in their houses.
Right.
And so, if you fail to pay, one of the things that we that's always in the back of our mind is that we have a lot of options because we're a private lender, a small lender. We can do things that a Citicorp or a big money center bank can't do,
Right. Right.
or you have to go through so many hoops at that institution in order to be able to get this.
Right.
We can extend the term. You know, we're not afraid of having a 27 and a half month loan or, that kind of thing. We can change the interest rates. We can change the payment. We can put balloons into a loan, so we can do step ups in, payment, a payment of this rate, this for X many years, and then it goes to a different level down the road. So there are a lot of things that we can do. We can be very creative because we're trying to work with the borrower to come up with a plan that the borrower can live with,
Right.
because we
Right.
want outcome number one.
Right. 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 And we don't want to do anything that is disruptive to people's lives when there are other options that they could possibly take advantage of, right?
True,
Um,
true.
but again, it comes down to understanding what your investment is when you're
Mhm.
choosing the notes to invest in, right?
True.
But you still only have three possible outcomes, right?
Yeah.
And that should alone in your mind develop a foundation of comfort, a foundation of
Yeah.
security, in
And
knowing that this is the parameter, or these are the parameters that you're working in with
Agreed.
the
Agreed.
investment.
And the other, when we talk about outcome number three, there is a foreclosure process,
Hmm.
and if it gets to that, we will start the legal process for foreclosure. One of the things that I'll say about that is that, and one of the reasons we're relatively comfortable about it, is that it's a standard process. And again, just like there are three possible outcomes, even for the foreclosure process, it's a set legal process by the various states.
Right.
So we will get counsel in that state that is part of the foreclosure bankruptcy bar.
Right.
So this is what
Right.
they do for a living. Um, and they will represent us in that case and help us walk through the process.
Right.
I was talking to a lawyer the other day, and the fastest foreclosure I've ever experienced, which was, and the lawyer told me that my counsel just got lucky. It was 48 hours.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
from the time the document was filed with the court to when the judge signed it was 48 hours.
Right.
I can't do an eviction that quick.
Right.
Now,
And
well, like I said, the lawyer said that my lawyer just got lucky.
it's okay to be
He
lucky.
filed it on a slow day.
It's okay to be lucky. I mean, it worked out, right?
Yeah, yeah,
But even with that, because there is a foreclosure process,
yes,
and if the borrower knows that that's where it's heading,
yeah,
there's still a couple of steps we can take to still make the borrower whole before it actually goes through the full foreclosure cycle, which
true,
is, cash for keys, right? Um,
absolutely,
we've had that situation to work out a couple of times, right? Where they didn't even realize that's something that, they could also work out with the
yeah,
lender. And
yeah,
they were glad because now the burden has been lifted, right? And
yeah.
they feel like they get to start new, start fresh, and not worry about the doom and gloom of facing foreclosure, right?
True,
And their credit, right? To a
true, yeah,
point now, how do you start over now with that on your report? So,
absolutely. And the other, and again, part of the reason why we don't like to start the process is the borrower has to pay our legal fees.
yeah,
So, um, and if you're already financially strapped,
right,
having another $3,000 or $4,000 bill thrown on top of you is not helpful. So,
right,
yeah,
right. And then we've had just recently, right, where in the midst of moving forward with the foreclosure because there was a death in the family, et cetera, et cetera. Um, the time was given, and because we are private lenders, we were able to give them time to put the house on the market,
yeah,
and they since received an offer, right?
yeah,
Which
yeah.
will now, instead of going through the route of foreclosure as route three, right? It's going through now
Do
route two,
yeah,
where
pay
it's
it
going
off
to get
early.
paid off. Everybody stays whole, right?
Yeah,
So,
yeah. Yeah. The last thing, Kim, that folks have a concern about is that borrowers will often go into bankruptcy, and and frankly, that tends to be a tactic that people will use to kind of stay in their homes. Um, and again, we're comfortable with that because even that process, it is a process. There's a legal way that this is done. You're either going to file for Chapter 7, Chapter 13, Chapter 11, and there's a process that people go through. The attorneys that we use are in the bankruptcy foreclosure bar, so they know the process. They do it all the time. They're doing 4 or 5 bankruptcies as we speak, so not an issue. What tends to happen though is even so if you think about that as kind of the worst case, they file for bankruptcy. The bankruptcy is actually very helpful to the lender.
yes,
Um, it's most people think of a bankruptcy as being helpful to the borrower, and it is because it helps them to restructure their life, their debts, and whatever. But it's also set to be fair so that the lenders get paid what they're owed.
right,
So what will happen in the bankruptcy process for us is that we wind up getting two payments every month. The
Yeah.
court will say, all right, yep, they're going to pay their monthly mortgage. And then the court will say, all right, this is how much they have in arrears, and this is how much they're going to pay every month to pay off the arrears. So we get two checks.
Right. Right.
That's not so bad.
No. No.
So, and the other thing that can possibly happen is an acceleration of the debt. If the mortgage was to mature during the bankruptcy, borrowers will be required to, again, pay the debt faster, sooner, so we get our money back sooner.
Right. Because there's a true assessment that's been taking place, right, of the borrower and with their state of being at the time, and what they can truly afford and pay.
Yeah, and again, the courts are relatively impartial, so they're trying to make sure that everybody gets satisfied, and that kind of works for us. It has worked for us in many occasions. The final thing that I'll say about bankruptcy is that even though people who will file for bankruptcy, most people don't complete the plan. I think the number, a couple of years ago was like 57% of the people that file for Chapter 13 don't complete it. And frankly,
Right.
most of them don't get through the first year.
Right.
So
it goes back to Route 2, right?
Yeah, you go back to number 2. You pay it off early. So having said all of that, what can go wrong? 3 possible outcomes. For the most part, those outcomes help you to feel comfortable that your investment is secure,
right?
That you will not, that the probability of losing money with a deal, with a note, is relatively low. So I hope through the course of what we've been talking about here today, people get a better sense of this is the worst that can happen.
Right.
Worst that can happen is outcome number 3. And even outcome number 3 ultimately leads back to outcome number 1 or outcome number 2.
Exactly. No. And I'm hoping as well that this will ease some concerns and thoughts and questions that we've been getting. And the other thing I'd like to offer is that we as a team, we help each other, those that invest with us, through us. We also support them through the process of their note investing. And so this is not a journey that you go on by yourself trying to figure it out, right? Clearly you're the expert in the field and, the guru that I call you. But we've all had that experience and know what to do, right? And as a result, we have a great team of attorneys that we work with as well, who are also experts in this realm, who will work with you as well to help you understand and guide and direct you depending on the circumstances, because no two note or borrowers are the same, right? But it's good to know. It's good to know, the process that you're about to go through with the note that you're investing in, if it's going down this path. But you have a team of people and supporters that will help you go through the process, so you don't have to worry about going through it alone and not knowing what do I do in these circumstances, right?
Yeah, that's true. And it's the community that we're in is a relatively small insular world. And as I mentioned, it seems like every lawyer knows every other lawyer. And I've known foreclosure bankruptcy lawyers for decades. Worked with them for many years. We have servicing companies that have superstars as part of their workout groups that are very, very helpful. I think that, again, getting back to the folks that are in the private investor world for dealing with notes tend to be, one, like I said, it's a small insular community, but they also tend to be very focused on helping the borrower,
Right.
coming up with solutions for the borrower. And I believe that that's why when we sit back and we go, what can go wrong? Typically, it gets back to the first or two things: either pay as agreed, or you wind up paying it off early.
Right. Right.
So,
But we are a company, a lender, that we do all that we can
yeah,
to work with the borrower and work it out as best as we can for the borrower.
absolutely.
Yep.
So,
This has been good. I'm trying to think of whether any other questions that were posed to me that we haven't covered, but this is probably worth listening to a couple of times, just so you know, as an investor, right, that this is where you can start to begin to draw your comfort in regards to being a new investor on as footnotes,
absolutely.
and we're also here. We're here to support you, here to work with you, here to answer questions, and we all grow together. So that was great. I don't have anything more. Do you?
Nope. Just if you are listening to the podcast, you like what you hear, please subscribe, hit the like button. If you have questions, go to our website. You can schedule some time with Kim, with me, with one of our other folks to talk about the note business and see if it's something that you want to get involved in or invest in. And hopefully you'll continue listening to our podcast. And again, hopefully you'll hit the like.
Yes. Please hit the like. And our website is www.freshshieldfinancial.com.
Yep.
Thanks, Jerry. It's been a
All
pleasure.
right. Thanks, Kim. Talk to
All
you
right.
later.